Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED, and this is Q5 Ham Radio. Jamie M0SDV traveled to Grenada with a simple goal: make 4,000 contacts and test himself in a single-op contest that required long-distance travel. Instead, he shocked veteran operators worldwide in the CQ Worldwide CW. Running as J38W, Jamie pushed through 40 hours to log more than 6,200 QSOs and over 9 million points, setting a new North American youth overlay record in the process. First, a quick thank you to DX Engineering for supporting these conversations. Welcome, Jamie. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, hi, Kevin. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So first of all, great job in Grenada, and I want to get into that in a second. Let's start with where you are.
So I'm located in the central part of the UK, so we're about 20 miles north of the city of Birmingham, so quite centralised location. Not very good for travelling, but it's okay.
And tell me about your ham radio background. How long have you been licensed?
So I first started getting involved in 2013. My dad is licensed. He's a 2E0CAP. And he got me interested back in 2013. Kind of put me on the foundation license course here in the UK. And, I wasn't that interested. I had a little bit of interest, but not over the top. I kind of sat the license, made a few QSOs. And back then I started on 2 meters FM. And from there it just kind of escalated. The interest developed. I kind of wanted to start experimenting more, making more long distance QSOs. Because, there's only so many times you can speak to the same guys on 2 meters FM.
Absolutely. And at some point you got into de-expeditions and contesting. I'm particularly interested in your de-expedition career. How did you get started with that?
My sort of history really came from contesting more so than de-expeditioning. So I did a few small contests from home with like wire antennas, and Lee, G0MTN, used to kind of help me out with my logs and stuff, because I don't know what happened, but a few times in the early days the logs were completely messed up. So Lee kind of directed me a little bit there, and you've probably heard of Callum M0MCX, the guy behind DX Commander. He invited me down for a few field days at the local club in South Birmingham, and we kind of developed into contesting through that. And then along comes the GR2HQ team for the IAR UHF championships, and they invited me to do a 15-meter sideband. From there we moved on to M6T, and I kind of got noticed a little bit in the contesting world, which was then the Irish, the EIDX group, sort of got hold of me and says, "Do you want to come on a de-expedition with us to Togo?" So I'm like, absolutely I do. So I had a look, see if I could make it work, which quite fortunately I could. And we went out, did 5 Victor 7 Echo India, and you just kind of get a bit more noticed, get a few more invites. But the de-expeditioning started in 2019, but before that came a background of contesting that it took to get noticed as an operator first.
So the de-expeditions that you have gone on, I know at least a couple have intersected with contests. Have they all intersected with contests?
No, not all of them. So I think the majority of the big expeditions I've been on have been around contests. 5 Victor 7 Echo India was solely just a de-expedition. 20 or so guys going out with a lot of equipment and making 50,000 QSOs. Again, what I developed through contesting a bit more, did some more single-up contesting, got a few more invites. So I went out to Mauritius probably 3 years in a row, where I was part of the 3 Bravo 8 Mike team for CQ Worldwide CW. What else? We also did ARRL DX CW in Guyana as 8 Radio 7 X-Ray, and then again this year as Victor 7-3 Whiskey. The idea to set about doing it on my own, not really sure where that came from, but I thought I'd give it a go.
Well, I want to explore that further. Was it the experience you got with the other de-expeditions that gave you the confidence to pack up your gear and go by yourself?
It's something I've always thought about doing. So the 8R7 project was initially intended to be a solo op entry, a solo op expedition. And that was on the basis that the licensing in Guyana was so hard to get as a team. I could get one as a single op, but everybody sort of said, you're not going to get a license, so don't even bother. And that kind of pushed me to say, I am going to get a license, I am going to Guyana. And it's only when I managed to get the license that I thought, well, that was easier than I thought. let's get some other guys involved here and try and go about this as a team effort. It's much rarer than I could ever handle on my own. So let's put a good amount of QSOs in the log. And from there we kind of developed into, a few other big team expeditions, and then eventually me going to Grenada alone. So the intention has always been to do something single op in a DXCC entity. But it's taken a while to get there, build the knowledge, the experience, and I think that now was probably the right time to do it.
So tell us more about that knowledge that you acquired by going on other DXpeditions. What were the lessons you learned?
Well, that's a good question. There's a lot to learn with DXpeditioning and DX traveling, and it's how to get a station that's fully functional, fully operational, tested before you go and capable, so that when you land on the island or in the remote place where you don't have access to like a Home Depot or Amazon, for example, you can just it's all there, you've got it all ready and prepared. So I think the knowledge is a massively important factor here, to be able to get that before you go. And over the years I've been taught how to build different types of antennas, how to build different types of stations, how to pack it all within a 23 kilogram airline allowance, and then getting through customs, security. I wouldn't have had the confidence, say 5 years ago, to walk through airport security with a linear amplifier, but having done it a few times with some people that have got the experience and showed me this is how easy it is, it really helped build my confidence to get there.
So tell us more about the difference between traveling with gear and setting it up versus traveling with gear that's going to be a competitive station as you were in Grenada. What's the difference? For
me, no real difference. If I'm being honest, the equipment that I carried was pretty much identical to what I would on a standard DXpedition. And that's all around airline luggage allowances and so on. For me, the competitive aspect of this trip was being able to choose the right location. And everybody that's been to Grenada before me has been on the south of the island, and they've recommended cottages, villas and so on at the south of the island. But that's not going to help me. I'm not going to be competitive if I've got to shoot my signal over the mountain and then back out the other side. So I chose the location on the north side, but relatively speaking my equipment remained the same. Had I had a slightly different location a bit closer to the sea, I might have changed things up a bit. I wouldn't have taken the hex beam. I'd have taken something a bit more ocean friendly, vertical dipole arrays and stuff like that. But yeah, relatively it remains the same. Compact, lightweight, something that I can carry alone was the main goal here.
So before we dig more into the north versus the south, which makes total sense, I've made the same mistake, getting on the wrong side of an island and spending a week there and realizing there's a lot of work getting over that mountain that's behind me. But why Grenada? Why did you choose Grenada for the CQ Worldwide CW contest?
So I've tried to go to Grenada a couple of times in the last 2 or 3 years, but something's always happened around work where I couldn't get the time off to go. And it was always intended to be a vacation where I'd just take a small vertical and 100 watts and, treat it more as a holiday than anything else. But I didn't have any plans for CQ Worldwide this year, and it's been a ritual for the last 4 or 5 years that I always take off 10 days that surround CQ Worldwide CW so I can go and do something. So I thought, I've got the license, the flights out of London are relatively cheap, the accommodation is relatively cheap, and it's a desirable location. There's only a very few amount of active hams that are on the bands in Grenada, so that would make me likely to be a unique multiplier. Yeah, I'm still in Zone 8, so it's not very competitive as far as a zone, and it still counts as North America, so the points are going to be a bit less. But the aspect of being unique and being the only person on air from the island was a big draw for me. And talk to us about licensing. Was that difficult? No, not at all. The licensing process was very easy. So they have an e-licensing system. So you go online, sometimes I think when I first went on to their web portal, it didn't allow me access to the amateur licensing, but a quick web chat, and they enabled that on my profile. So I just filled out the application attached my UK license, paid the fee of maybe $20 US, and within about 3 months, I had all the paperwork through, license was in hand, and it was ready to go.
And Jamie, how did you find the location on the north side of the island? Was it just Airbnb checks and Google Maps?
Yeah, pretty much. Airbnb is one of my favourite things for choosing places to stay, because you look at the more tourist focused websites, booking.com and whatever you use, and they'll just show you hotels and resorts and things in the tourist centres. But when I want to get out of the noise of the city, and I want to get away from people and do ham radio, it's got to be somewhere a bit more unique. So I had a look at Grenada, and I decided that I want to be on the north side of the island because I have a good takeoff towards Europe and North America. So I just kind of focused and zoomed in the map on the Airbnb app, and kind of like cut off the bottom half of the island and said, this is, from east to west, this is where I'm looking. Found this place that has a nice big garden to put all my antennas. It slopes downhill 200 metres into the sea, and the directions were ocean path towards North America, Europe, Africa, north over the pole to Japan, and it just seemed like a perfect, an ideal opportunity to take.
And did you announce your intention with the property owners?
I did, yeah. So I sent them a message before I'd made any reservations. I said, I want to come and stay at your place. I want to do my hobby of ham radio. I explained that I travel across the world and do this, and most people don't quite get it, but when you get behind the intention there that I want to put up some antennas, they're going to be like big fishing poles that stick vertically up out of the ground. Maybe one looks like an umbrella that's been turned upside down. And they go, yeah, we don't really understand, but sure, go ahead.
That's awesome. So how do you deal with the unknown, power lines, noise issues? Do you just take the chance?
Yeah, so it's quite helpful. The area that I was in, within about 500 metres or so, there have been a number of radio hams that have been there before me. So there was J38W, which was 500 metres down the road from where I was staying. They said they had no issues. And then DL5AXX was there in 2008, 500 metres in the other direction up the road, and he had no problem. So I kind of figured that, yeah, a bit of development might have happened. There might be some noise, but it's a relatively rural QTH to choose. But, with the acceptance that there might be a bit of development and increased noise, it's a little bit of a risk, but you have to go for it. To mitigate it slightly, I take RF filters for the mains electricity, take plenty of ferrites if I can problem solve, turn things off, turn things on, just work through the problem if it exists. But really, I didn't find any noise at this location. The noise was caused either by the pileups or some QRN coming from some storms over South America. But in that region, it's to be expected.
And Jamie, what did you take for equipment? Not only radio, amp, but also specifically antennas. What did you bring for antennas, and did you have backups?
Yeah, so the antennas, I have a hex beam. I've owned that for about 5 years now. It's one of these G3TXQ D-Expedition hex beams. It weighs 6 kilograms, which is more than easy enough to put up for a single operator. That was on a 10-meter spider beam mast. I had, for the low bands, an 18-meter DX Commander pole. On that was a full-size quarterwave for 80 meters, and then hanging from the side was an inverted L for 160. They shared the common feed point, and then just a single quarterwave vertical for 40. For the most part, I figured that if something goes horribly wrong, I have enough parts and pieces here to be able to fix it. So I took some spares, spare wires, spare connectors, all that sort of stuff. And the idea would have been that if the hex beam fails, if the pole snaps, if something happens, then I'll be able to make it work with what I've got, rather than having to take 2 sets of antennas just in case. So I had a drone with me. If one of the poles had broken, the idea would be to fly the drone over a palm tree, be a bit innovative, change up the standard way of working a little bit. And I was massively overweight with my luggage anyway, so to take loads and loads of spares wasn't going to work for me. But the small things that you can do to make it a bit more fail-safe for me was the best solution.
And your radio?
My radio was a Icom IC-7300. It's a fairly new radio. It's probably not done many QSOs, so the wear and tear is quite low. I didn't really have a backup plan for that. I was really kind of just saying a prayer and hoping for the best with that one. The amplifier's travelled with me everywhere. I figured if something goes wrong with the amplifier, then I've still got 100 watts from the radio. If the radio fails as well, I'll just go to the bar.
Good strategy. What was the amp that you took?
It's an Expert SPE 1.3. So it's capable up to 1.4 kilowatts, but ran it consistently at 1K.
So I'm trying to do the math in my head. This has to be more than a couple cases.
So I got away with 2 checked bags of 30 kilograms each, 1 hand luggage with my amplifier, personal items, clothing, and then a backpack with all the other bits and pieces in.
So you checked the radio but carried on the amp.
Yeah, the amp is a nice size. It fits under the seat in front of me, so it doesn't actually count towards my hand luggage allowance, which makes it a bit easy.
And my sense is that you were there for a while. It wasn't just a 4-day in and out trip.
No, I was there for 10 or 11 days, I think. I wanted to have enough time to be able to set up the station, test it, troubleshoot, and make sure there was no problems ahead of the contest. I was trying not to underestimate the task of setting up a full station single-handedly in tropical heat. So I left a good week before the contest to make sure I could set up and get it all working. But realistically, I didn't need as much time as I spent there to get it all running.
And were you solo setting up, or did you get some help from local hams?
No, completely alone, pretty much. The only one instance where I needed a bit of help was with the 18-metre pole. As I was pushing up the very last section, I managed to lift the base of the pole off the ground. At the same time, a big gust of wind came. So that fell over into some bushes. The local gardener actually saw everything happen, and he came running over with his machete to chop away the trees and free the ropes. So no, I'd planned pretty much for a full solo setup, and for the most part that's what I did, with the exception of the gardener coming in to get rid of some trees.
So I'm guessing you were able to make a number of contacts before the contest actually began.
Yeah, so before the contest, I think I was close on 4,000 contacts before the contest, and that was across most modes and bands. I just wanted to, really shake down the station and make sure it was going to perform okay in the contest, make sure I didn't have any small, silly issues that were going to cause me problems during the contest. And, I think 4,000 QSOs is probably enough to be able to say this works.
Well, and from what I saw on the scoreboard, it was more than sufficient. It seems as though you did really well. Were you pleased with the result? Actually,
yeah, very pleased. So I'd planned probably a lot less than what I'd achieved. I said I'm going to do 4,000 QSOs in the contest. I've no intention of trying to win. I'm just here to have a bit of fun. It's my first time doing this completely alone, so let's take it as more of a learning opportunity than a competitive entry. But to see the result of over 9 million points, over 6,000 QSOs, even I was shocked to see that.
So tell us more about that. How do you think that happened? If you had an expectation you might do 4,000, you end up doing considerably more than that. Was it conditions, your superior operating skills, the great station that you built, all the above?
Well, it's hard to say, I think. No, I think conditions were... We had a big solar flare before the contest, and I think we were just in the recovery phases of that, which was quite fortunate. I think the sheer volume of people calling me and having the ability to run those at a good speed was quite helpful, and that goes back to my experiences and the opportunities I've been given over the years to be able to run big pile-ups. Running them simplex was a whole nother ball game. I'm used to going split, and if I need to, I'll use half the band to be able to do that. So managing a big simplex pile-up at 240 QSOs an hour, I think was probably my highest rate during the contest, was something else for me. But it's quite difficult. It's I accepted the challenge, and somehow we ended up with a result of over 6,000 QSOs, which I couldn't have imagined.
So I don't recall reading anywhere if you put in the full 48 hours or if you slept some, but I've got to believe that it must be tough when you're there by yourself. There's no No moral support like Chris and Dan had. Dan had Levi with him. Chris had Valerie in the back. Just that person kind of cheering you on. Were there ever times where you were feeling a little bit discouraged and wondering if you could keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that in pretty much every contest I do single up. And it is difficult. You've got to overcome a big mental element of, being awake for almost 2 days. I only actually did 40 hours of the contest. So I took 8 hours off, had a little bit of sleep on both days. And that's sort of beside the fact. I have to take time off so I can eat because I've got nobody to bring food and snacks and drinks. So I have to take a bit of time off. And if I'm going to walk away from the radio, it may as well be for the full hour that we're going to count. Otherwise, it's just wasted time. So if I'm going to take any short break, whether it's to eat, drink, sleep, I try and make sure I'm taking an hour off at a reasonably appropriate time in the contest. And for me, I chose the mornings after about an hour or two after sunrise. Europe's gone on 40 metres, North America's still there. But I'm not going to miss anything between then and Europe opening again on the higher bands. I'm only going to miss a few 2-point QSOs to North America. So it seemed like a good opportunity to have those bit of break and take the headphones off for a little while.
And what would you do differently next time?
I think I would probably better prepare myself for staying awake a bit longer, get a bit more sleep before the contest. Did I need to spend a week before the contest making 4,000 or 5,000 QSOs? Probably not, because you go into the contest with a certain level of exhaustion already, and then to sit there for 48 hours, it's hard work. And I know the guys have mentioned hallucinations and stuff like that throughout their experiences. I didn't get the hallucinations because I made sure I took that step back. I'd have liked to operate for a bit longer, but I don't think I set myself up to do it properly. So if I was to go back next year and do it again, I'd probably do less QSOs in holiday expedition mode, have a bit more rest, have a bit more relaxation time before the contest, and just go straight into the contest and do a bit more.
Well, it must impact you also knowing that you can achieve the kind of numbers you achieve. That must immediately change your stance going into another contest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. Most of my contest experiences have been from the UK or, multi-op entries overseas. So I don't count necessarily how many QSOs I'm making on my own if I'm in a multi-single, multi-two. But then in the UK, when I'm doing single op, I think the most QSOs I've made was 3,900. So to get significantly higher than that overseas was just an incredible thought. And it makes me think about what additional skills do I need to get that even higher. And for me, I've never really played too much with SO2R or 2BSIQ or anything like that. So I think that's my next step and my next hurdle is to try and get into SO2R a bit more. I've used it occasionally from time to time, but never really invested much time in operating it. So for me, it'll be developing that skill going forward to see what can I actually achieve here. If I've done this with one radio, one amplifier and some simple antennas, what's waiting on the other side of that hurdle?
And do you have another contest de-expedition on the horizon?
Not as such at the moment. So I have a de-expedition. We're going to Bangladesh we don't know the call sign yet, but the Next Generation DX group, which is a group of young guys a similar age to me, have been travelling for the last 3 years. So we're going to Bangladesh in March. That's likely to coincide actually with ARRL SSB, but we're still waiting on what the set plans for that will be. For me on a personal level, I'm running out of vacation time with work, so before it resets in April, I'm probably not going to be able to do too much, but I'll definitely be looking for something to do next year for CQ Worldwide.
Any final thoughts for the audience, Jamie?
No, I think just a massive thank you to everybody. There's a lot of work that goes into this expedition and this contest, and the result that I got is hugely attributed to the activity level of this contest. So it's really nice to see that I can travel the world and it's still worthwhile because there's still so many people into the contest and that want to come and work you. So just a big thanks to everybody out there.
Well, as I said, very impressive result, and I really appreciate you joining me today.
No, thank you, Kevin, and it's a pleasure to have joined you tonight.
My name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. This has been Q5 Ham Radio. I've been talking to Jamie M0SDV. J38W during the CQ Worldwide CW contest. You're almost absolutely certain to hear him on the air soon from one of a number of contest stations, Bangladesh, and I'm sure on the road again for next year's CQ Worldwide CW. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.